All right, so the next question, in what specific ways does this belief act as a resource to you? Again, an ecology question. Making sure that you're not going to attempt to change a belief that actually is in service of the person, that actually has a positive function. That question makes sense to everyone? Yeah, and sometimes the person says, real quickly, there's no problem, there's no resource there. It doesn't serve me at all. And then okay, we can start to explore changing this. Okay. Sometimes finding an answer to that begins to tell you why the belief has stayed in place. Does that make sense to you as well? Gets its secondary gain. Mm-hmm. It's like if I were to change this belief, that could mean, something really not so good for me. Like it might put me into a vulnerable situation, or it might have an effect on another belief. Right? So one belief's holding another belief in place. So you're really trying to uncover this information so that when you go to change the belief, you have the best possible opportunity to have it change. I mean, over the years of working with NLP and teaching in front of a lot of people and having a lot of people say at different times, I've been working on this for a long time. I've been working on this belief to change this for a long time. For years. And I haven't been able to change it. And so then you can start believing, I can't change. Or NLP doesn't work. Or, many other things are possible to begin to form beliefs if you've been working on the same thing. My contention is probably that you just haven't found the key to unlock the belief that's holding the other beliefs in place. Yeah? Because as I tried to emphasize yesterday, the elicitation process is the most important part. Changing beliefs is a lot easier once all the information is there. And the person can really see the landscape of how the belief is held and what other beliefs are holding it and so on. Because then you begin to get to, the source. What?
It's a little bit tautological, isn't it? Because it's holding something strong in place. And what's going to allow you to let go of it?
What's going to allow you to let go of it? Exactly. And you've worked with that some, right? You work with the positive intention, like in reframing. Once you get the positive intention, then you can start exploring how to make sure that you maintain the positive intention. Because often it's about safety and security, isn't it? Often you find that we hold things in ways in order to protect ourselves, which is a very fundamental human trait. Right? So we don't do certain behaviors, we don't think certain things, we don't say certain things in order to protect ourselves. Because we form beliefs about what it might mean to be vulnerable in a situation, or to have somebody tell us that we're wrong, or have somebody differ in opinion. And yet we all know that those things are going to happen. Right? There's no way to go through life without those things happening, without somebody questioning us or having a different opinion. So sometimes there's some fundamental beliefs that don't allow us to step fully into ourselves and to go, it's okay that people differ in their opinions. It's okay that people question what I'm doing, don't think what I'm doing is valuable, And I just hope that there are some that do, right? Hope there are some that out there that do see who I am and do appreciate that. And have to live with that hope, I guess. Okay, so those are some questions that you can begin to use and really pay attention to the responses that come back and see how useful these are and see if you can begin to make some adaptations to them. See where they lead you, where these questions lead you. To me, that's the most fun part of all of NLP, is exploring somebody else's experience and being able to do that without putting any of my stuff on them. Being able to do that in a way where I just ask questions and I just am interested in discovering and finding out how that person operates, what goes on with them. And it's amazing over all the years that I've been doing this work that I find that we're all so bloody similar. Our programs are so similar. You know, our motivations are so similar. And yet it's still interesting. Still interesting to find out how that person works. So put on your curiosity hats today when you're listening. It'll help you. It'll help you to be a lot more open to what you're receiving. Okay. I want to take a few more minutes before we go into the walking belief change to begin to talk about application. How do we apply this work that we're doing in beliefs out there in the world? There's a lot of context, there's a lot of places that we live in our lives where we're not going to be doing this walking belief change with somebody, where we're not going to be sitting down and asking somebody to change their submodalities, to change a belief, where we're not going to have time to sit down and do a re-imprinting, either because the person's not interested, right? Or there just isn't time to do it. So how do we apply this work that we're doing to all the areas that you're working in out there? I mean, there's some real obvious ones. You can use this in therapy. You can use this in coaching. Now, you may have to adapt it a little bit if you're a phone coach. If you're working with people on the phone, you can't actually stand there with them and guide them through a process. You have to learn how to adapt some of these things to doing them conversationally. So what's important when you begin to think about taking any of the techniques that you've learned in NLP and making them conversational? What do you need to know in order to adapt a technique to doing it conversationally? The state?
The state and where he wants to be.
Okay, so you're talking about the present state and the desired state? Okay, so if we need to know the present state and the desired state, how does that help me to do a technique conversationally?
So you get a sense of what's stuck in the person, what he wants, and the belief is may pop up there.
Okay, so you're saying it, but you're not saying it. You're looking for what? The structure, right? You're looking for the structure of how the person has whatever their difficulty, whatever their goal, how they have it set up. Because all the techniques are designed around particular structures, aren't they? This is designed around working with a belief. So when you're talking with somebody and a belief jumps out at you and goes, oh, that might be something worth changing, now you have some technique to do the change with. So when you look at the belief patterns, what's the basic structure of how a belief changes? Bingo. You have to first get them to question the belief, right? If they still hold it strongly in themselves, it's not going to change. So you have to begin to create doubt around it first. Does that make sense? So you don't have to use a technique to do that. You can use reframing, you can use just asking them questions, you can help them to find the context where it's true, where it's not true. Just through your questionings, they can begin to uncover how that belief works. And then you're exploring the structure. You're discovering how it works for that person. And then you know, in order to change a belief, I need to help them to begin to doubt that what they believe is true, because it's limiting them in some way. So if they begin to doubt it, now we can start thinking about what the possibility is of a new belief. So in each of these techniques, that structure is there. And if you look out into the world, or you look at yourselves, and you look at all the beliefs that you've changed without even knowing it, you can imagine that that's what happened. You believed something, and then something happened in your world. You read something, somebody told you something, you had an experience of something, and you started to doubt that what you believed was true, which opened the doors for a new belief to emerge.
Can you do a demonstration? Because I think this is very important for us.
A demonstration of a conversational one?
How to doubt it. Because I know I have lots of women who doesn't like to do this belief change or the score method. Or
The score or the belief change.
yeah, and even logical level sometimes I always do it with them, talking with them. So how do you?
I'm hoping to do a demonstration of a conversational belief change at the end of the day today.
Okay.
So that's where we're headed if we can, get there. That's the goal. So yeah, but I wanted to make sure that we talked about that a little bit because, in a business context, in a business meeting, are there beliefs that are being expressed? Absolutely. Absolutely. What are the contexts? In sports performance or stage performance or musicians, are there beliefs that hold them back from achieving higher levels of performance? You bet.
I work a lot with trainers, and there's
a whole bundle of beliefs in there, about power and relation and...
Trainers, people who teach things.
Yes.
Okay. So
And
trainers, teachers.
So one of the best ways I found of shifting beliefs is to provide the capability shift. To provide an opportunity for a capability shift, so they've got that evidence in the body.
Okay. So to sort of take the belief out of identity or...
Well, the belief that I can't draw, for example.
Oh, I can't draw.
And through accelerated learning, teach them to draw in half an hour or something.
Okay, so changing the belief by demonstration, by having them have a direct experience of learning something that they didn't think that they could learn before. Great, great. So that's a performance-oriented
Kids,
change.
little kids, they come to you and say, "Oh, I can't do something,
I can't do math, I can't
Math,
spell, I can't...
yes. I can't run, I can't swim,
Exactly.
simple things.
Exactly. And those beliefs can change just by, as Anne was saying, by actually doing it. Having enough practice until the person can do it. Or teaching the spelling strategy, right? Or teaching techniques for how to think mathematically, right? So those are ways to affect something at the capability level, just by doing behavior so that the person develops the capability, and then the belief changes. So that happens a lot in the world, doesn't it? My ex-wife used to be terrified of the ocean, and so she became a lifeguard in Florida on the beach. And she had to go in the water, and she learned to get over it. Learned to get over her fear and whatever beliefs were holding that in place. So she began to learn about the ocean and how it works, and that she could be in it and be capable. And so then beliefs changed. So yeah, that's definitely a way to do it. Obviously in NLP, what we're trying to teach is something more cognitive. rather than actually having to go out there and work with somebody over time to get them to develop a capability. It's like, let's first be open to the possibility that you could learn it. Now you can go into it with a whole different attitude.
Yeah, the framing is really important. Very
Otherwise, they won't be interested. Yeah. So, applications. Understanding the structure, right? You can do any of these techniques conversationally. Any of the NLP processes. Change personal history, new behavior generator. Even the phobia trauma process. Now, doing something conversationally requires, sometimes your sensory acuity has to be a little sharper. Because you have to be able to see the change occurring as you're talking to the person. Whereas if you're doing a technique, it's a lot easier to see it occurring. Does that make sense? The technique sometimes gives the ability to see them doing something. You know, as Georgie was walking through it, you could see her full physiology shifting in it. So when you're just sitting down chatting with somebody, trying to help them change a belief, sometimes it's just a matter of helping them to have just an inkling of doubt first. You might not be changing the entire belief in one sitting. You might just introduce a little bit of doubt. And then the next time you see them, you might ask them, so how are you experiencing that thought that you had before? And they say, well, I'm not quite sure about that anymore. Or it's shifted. Sometimes just creating a little doubt can move the process forward. So to me, that's the application of not having to do a technique. It's understanding the structure. And so if you go back in your notes and you look at each of the techniques, find the structure in there. It's like, what is change personal history all about? What does it do? What does the swish pattern do? How come it works in certain contexts, with certain kinds of habits and so on? Because if you begin to understand the structure, then you can apply things in a lot of different contexts. In business meetings, in your own sports performance or your own performance if you're a performer of some kind, if you're an artist, you know, whatever skills you want to develop, you can begin to apply these skills to yourself by understanding these structures. Any questions about that? Because I know the application question is a tough one. It's like, if I'm not a therapist or a coach, what do I do with this stuff? You know, if I can't sit down with somebody and work with them for an hour, then how do I do it? Because that's how we're learning it. So there's a deeper meaning to all this. The mastery of this is to understand what these techniques are doing, what's happening in a person's mind, what's happening in their physiology, so that I can begin to have that happen just when I'm conversationally talking to a friend about business, and they state a belief. And I go, well, what makes you think that that's true? Right? Just through questions, begin to explore it. Okay. Should we take a short break? Let's do 5 minutes. Cool down the room a little bit.